I scored 8.5 in my IELTS with only 5 days to prepare. I did not buy any course because the only thing IELTS needs is practice. You need to know what you're going to get on your test day, and today we'll be discussing exactly that. So in today's video, we're going to see the IELTS format, which includes listening, reading, writing, and speaking. We will practice IELTS test questions for all 4 sections, along with tips on how to improve your score for each section. A list of free resources where you can practice more, and in the end I'll share with you my test experience, specifically about choosing the speaking slot. Just FYI, in case you're deciding between TOEFL versus IELTS, I've made a complete tutorial for TOEFL as well. Its link is in the description. After watching both tutorials on this channel, you will be able to decide which test you personally find easier and must book. Now without further ado, let's dive into the IELTS format. IELTS tests your English language skills using 4 rounds: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And the score is valid for 2 years. You must choose the IELTS academic test if you're applying to universities abroad, but if you're giving IELTS for immigration purposes, then you must choose IELTS General Training. Be very careful about the option you choose. When I was appearing for the test, there was one person in my batch who was giving IELTS for the second time. He actually wanted a score to apply for his Canadian PR, but earlier he had appeared for IELTS Academics, which is not valid for immigration, so choose your option carefully based on your requirements. Coming back to the format, listening and speaking rounds would be the same for both IELTS Academics and General Training, but the reading and writing rounds are slightly different. We will look at how when we discuss each of these 4 rounds in detail, along with specific examples. The duration of the exam is approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes. Listening, reading, and writing rounds are done continuously with no breaks in between them, but the speaking round can be scheduled up to a week before or after the test. In my experience, this heavily depends on the options your test center gives you. My test center was giving me same-day slots. We'll talk about selecting speaking slots in the last section. You also have the option to choose if you want to take the test on paper or on a computer. I personally chose the computer option because it makes editing easier, especially when you are writing your essay, but that's just my preference. You can comment below and tell me which option you prefer and why, because I think a lot of people prefer paper as well, and that was the IELTS format. If you have any questions about the format, then let me know and I will get back as soon as I can. Now let's look at each of these rounds in detail and do some practice questions. The listening round is the same for both academics and general training. It lasts for 30 minutes. You will hear 4 recordings and have to answer 40 questions. These questions can be multiple choice, sentence completion, matching, map labeling, and so on and so forth. We will see some examples in a moment to understand them better. But what makes listening tricky is that you can hear the recordings only once, and you have to answer the questions while you're listening to the audio. But if you understand basic English, then it is not that scary. All you need to get a good score for this round is practice. So let's start by practicing each of these. 4 recording types. Recording type number 1. In the first recording, you will hear an everyday conversation set in a social context. Before you hear the recording, you will see the questions on your screen just like this. As soon as you see your questions, the first thing you must do is read this instruction right here that specifies how many words you need to write for each answer. For this example, it says no more than 3 words or a number. If your answer doesn't meet this word limit, then it'll be automatically considered incorrect, so always keep this word limit in mind. After reading the instruction, next, look at the questions. Every audio file will give you some time to go through the questions. For this example, we can see that the conversation will be about some shipping agency, and the missing information is media, image of a shipping container, shipping agency office, name, address, postcode, width, height of some container, contents of the container, which also includes clothes, and some total value in the end. Going through the questions is the most important step, because only then will you know what information to look for in the audio you're about to listen to. Now it's time to listen to the audio file. For this example, I'll be writing the answers on your screen as and when I hear it in the audio file, so that you understand the pace at which you're supposed to note down the answers. Let's go. Good morning, Packham's shipping agents. Can I help you? Oh yes, I'm ringing to make inquiries about sending a large box, a container, back home to Kenya from the UK. That'd be great, thank you. First of all, I need a few details from you. Fine. Can I take your name? It's Jacob McKeary. Can you spell your surname, please? Yes, it's M-K-E-R-E. Is that M for mother? Yes, thank you. And you say that you will be sending the box to Kenya? That's right. And where would you like the box picked up from? From college, if possible. Yes, of course, I'll take down the address now. It's West Hall College. Is that W-E-S-T-H-A-L-L College? Yes, and where's that? It's Downlands Road in Bristol. BS89PU. Right, and I need to know the size. Yes, I've measured it carefully, and it's 1.5 meters long, 0.75 meters wide, and it's 0.5 meters high or deep. Great, so I'll calculate the volume in a moment and get some quotes for that. But first, can you tell me, very generally, what will be in the box? Yes, there's mostly clothes, okay, and there's some books. There's also some toys. Okay, and what is the total value, do you think, of the contents? Well, the main costs are the clothes and the books. They'll be about 1,500 pounds. But then the toys are about another 200, so I put down 1,700 pounds. Here are some tips to do well for this type of recording. Include the unit of measurement. If your answer is 0.75 meters, then include m or meter in your answer. But if the unit of measurement is already mentioned, like the pound symbol over here, then you don't have to write 1,700 pounds. Just the number 1,700 is enough. Listen to the names carefully, and don't just assume the spelling of a name. Let's assume they mentioned a name as Robert White. Now you might be tempted to write W-H-I-T-E for White, but the speaker might say that the name is spelled W-H-Y-T-E. So don't just assume spellings, but listen to them carefully. You're also given a little bit of time in the end to go through the answers. Use it to check for any spelling mistakes or to just guess answers for questions you might have missed. There's no negative marking, so don't leave out anything. In my opinion, recording one is the easiest because you just have to listen and connect information. But one thing they do to make it tricky is that they can mention the wrong information first and then the right one, or the right information first and then the wrong one. So don't lose your focus at any point. During the entire conversation, now let's move on to recording type 2 of the listening section. This will be a monologue set in a social context, like someone talking about some local facilities. To understand it better, let's look at an example. I will not be writing the answers on the screen for this one. Instead, I want you to take a piece of paper and write the question number and the answer next to it while you're listening to the audio. I will display the correct answers at the end of the section for you to cross-check. Since this is your first practice question, you might not get all of them correct, and that is okay. But try. You will improve with practice. Let's now look at the example. Don't forget to read the word limit written at the top, and most importantly, skim through the questions in the time provided to you. With that, let the audio begin. Thank you for calling the phone line for the Packed In on Sea bus tour. This is a recorded message lasting approximately 4 minutes, and it provides general information on the town bus tour. Packed In on Sea is a beautiful West Coast town and has attracted tourists for many years. One of the best ways of getting to know the town is to take the bus tour, which provides a wonderful viewing experience from one of our open-top buses. The tour is a round trip of the town, and there are a total of 4 stops where passengers can get on and off the bus. A lot of people start at the first stop, which is at the train station, as this is where many tourists arrive in the town. The next stop after the station is the aquarium, which is famous for its dolphin show and which has recently expanded to include sharks. This is well worth a visit and is very reasonably priced. Leaving the aquarium, the bus tour goes along the coast road and after a few kilometers, comes to the old fishing village where you can get off to stroll along the waterfront. There are some original buildings here, but most of the area has been modernized and is now used as a harbor for all kinds of seacraft, including yachts and some amazing powerboats. The tour then heads off to the last stop, and this is where most of the shops are, so for those of you keen to do a bit of shopping, this is the place for you. Our advice is to go to this part of the town in the morning when it is relatively quiet. It does get very busy in the afternoons, especially at the height of the season. This area of the town includes an ancient water fountain where many people like to have their photograph taken, so do look out for this. Now some details of the costs and timings. A family ticket, which includes 2 adults and up to 3 children, costs $30. An adult ticket costs $15. Children under the age of 15 are $5, and student tickets are $10 as long as you have a student card. All tickets are valid for 24 hours, which means that you can get on and off the bus as many times as you like within a 24-hour period. So you could, for example, start the tour in the afternoon and complete it the following morning. The first bus of the day leaves the station at 10 a.m., and the last one of the day leaves at 6 p.m. Buses leave every 30 minutes, and each tour takes a total of 50 minutes. There are many attractions at each of the stops, so wherever you get off the bus, there will be plenty to do. The bus tour tickets do not include entrance to any of these attractions, apart from the museum, which is located near the aquarium. Some buses have local guides who will point out places of interest and will provide information on the town. However, we cannot guarantee that every bus will have a guide, and so we also have an audio commentary that has been specially recorded for the bus tour by the tourist office. Headphones are available on the bus, and these are easy to operate. There is no extra charge for these. Just plug in, select the required language, and adjust the volume. Due to the winter months being rather cold and wet in Paxton-on-Sea, the bus tours only operate from March to September. The weather is usually warm and sunny during these months, so remember to bring some sun protection, especially on hot days. And of course, it does occasionally rain here in the summer, so if the weather looks bad, remember to bring some rainwear. The bus tours are available no matter what the weather. At the height of the summer, the tours can get very busy, so you are advised to book. You can book tickets online, over the phone, and also at the station and at any of the other tour stops. When booking over the phone, you can collect your tickets at any of the stops at the start of your tour. When you do it online, you can print your e-ticket, which you must remember to bring with you. Thank you for calling the Paxton-on-Sea phone line, and we look forward to seeing you soon on one of our tour buses. I want you to comment below and tell me what your answers were for questions 9 to 18. Don't worry, I will display the correct answers for you to cross-check at the end of the section, so keep that paper safe. Now here are a few tips to perform better for this type of conversation. Before the audio begins, read what's given on the screen. If it's a table, read its headers, check the rows, and see what information is missing so that you know what you have to look out for. Predict the obvious answers. You can tell that this answer will be some other water creature just like dolphins. It might be whales or sharks or walruses. Prediction might help you be more attentive when the audio is played. Do not forget the plurals. Dolphins has an S, so obviously answer 9 must be in this plural form. Don't write synonyms for the answer you hear. For example, the answer for 17 is rainwear. So if the weather looks bad, remember to bring some rainwear. That's what the audio mentions. Do not write raincoat for an answer or rain attire. Your answer must be exactly what the audio mentions. And number 5, you might hear synonyms for the keywords mentioned in the question. For example, the keyword here is very old, but the audio mentions ancient, which is its synonym. This area of the town includes an ancient water fountain, so don't just stick to the actual keywords while you're listening to the audio. Expect to hear the synonyms as well. I know it sounds complicated, but trust me, it gets better with practice, and I will show you where you can practice more for free. For now, let's move on to another example of recording type 2 where you will be given a map or a diagram and asked to label it just like this. We are given a map of the town library, and we have to figure out what the rest of these rooms are out of the options provided right here. Before the audio begins, here are a few tips to answer this type of map labeling question. Number 1, know your directions. In the audio file, when they are talking about the rooms, they might mention north, south, east, and west. Know which direction to move to when these get mentioned. Number 2, as soon as you see the map, immediately look at what sections have already been labeled, starting from the entrance. As you can see in this example, there's a librarian's desk to the right of the entrance. There's a library area somewhere in the center. It has fiction books to the left, nonfiction to the right. There's a seminar room in the corner and the library office right here. This navigation creates a mental map in your mind before the audio begins, which makes labeling the rest of the rooms a little easier. And most importantly, while you're listening to the audio, if you miss labeling one room, just forget it and move on to the next. There is no point dwelling over, oh wait, what was that direction again? Just move on to the next room because it's all going to go very fast. Just so that you know, I'm not good with directions, so map labeling always made me nervous. But after practice, I realized it's not as scary. With these 3 tips in mind, I want you to attempt answering these questions all by yourself, and we will check what the correct answers are at the end of the section. Let's now listen to the audio file. Okay everyone, so here we are at the entrance to the town library. My name is Anne, and I'm the chief librarian here, and you'll usually find me at the desk just by the main entrance. So I'd like to tell you a bit about the way the library is organized and what you'll find where, and you should all have a plan in front of you. Well, as you see, my desk is just on your right as you go in, and opposite this, the first room on your left has an excellent collection of reference books and is also a place where people can read or study peacefully. Just beyond the librarian's desk on the right is a room where we have up-to-date periodicals such as newspapers and magazines, and this room also has a photocopier in case you want to copy any of the articles. If you carry straight on, you'll come into a large room, and this is the main library area. There is fiction in the shelves on the left and non-fiction materials on your right. And on the shelves on the far wall, there is an excellent collection of books relating to local history. We're hoping to add a section on local tourist attractions too later in the year. Through the far door in the library, just past the fiction shelves, is a seminar room, and that can be booked for meetings or talks. And next door to that is the children's library, which has a good collection of stories and picture books for the under 11s. Then there's a large room to the right of the library area. That's the multimedia collection where you can borrow DVDs and so on. And we also have CD-ROMs you can borrow to use on your computer at home. It was originally the art collection, but that's been moved to another building. And that's about it. Oh, there's also the library office on the left of the librarian's desk. Okay, now does anyone have any questions? Yes, thank you, sir. It's all right if you were able to label just 2 rooms or no rooms at all. It went over my head the very first time too. Take a deep breath, go back to the recording and listen to it as many times as you need to, and in one of those tries, you will get all the answers right. Only by listening to it over and over again will you get used to the speed of the conversation and know where to look when they mention directions. Don't forget to comment below and tell me what your answers were for questions 19 to 23. I will display the correct answers at the end of this section, so keep that answer sheet safe. Moving on to recording type 3. This one will be a conversation among up to 4 people set in an educational or training context. For example, a university tutor and a student discussing an assignment. Let's look at an example to understand it better. Before we listen to the audio, here are a few tips to answer this type of question. As you would have noticed, these have the most number of words we've seen so far. The questions are long, and so are the answers. So obviously, tip number 1 is to practice increasing your speed of skimming through them. Tip number 2, in the audio, keywords of all of the answer options will be mentioned, but the conversation will be about how the rest of the answers are wrong and one of them is correct. So don't be just keyword driven and don't select the first keyword answer you hear. Tip number 3, sometimes when we listen to the audio, we only wait for the question keyword to appear, hoping that the answer would come immediately after. But unfortunately, the conversation will first discuss an answer, and then the question keyword will be mentioned. This keyword catches your attention and brings back your focus, but by then it's too late because the answer just went away. So while you are listening to the audio, your focus must be on the conversation while the questions remain at the back of your head. It should not be the other way around. You will know what I mean once we listen to the audio. Let the conversation begin. Hello, I'm Randy Gotra from the Technologies Department. Ah, yes, good, I'm Dave Hadley. Thanks for coming to see me, that's okay. I believe you want us to do some work for you? Yes, that's right. I'm responsible for students' admissions to the college, and I use a computer system to help process student enrollments and to do the timetabling. But it really doesn't suit the way we work these days. It's over 10 years old, and although it was fine when it was first introduced, it's just not good enough now. Okay, what problems are you experiencing? Well, 20 years ago, the college was quite small and we didn't have the numbers of students or tutors that we have now. So the system can't handle the increasing volumes. Well, there's a lot more data now, and it sometimes seems the system has crashed, but in fact, it just takes ages to go from one screen to the next, right? Is that the only problem? Well, that's the main one, but there are others. In the past, doing the timetabling was quite simple, but now we have a lot more courses. And what's made it complicated is that many of them have options, right? But the system should allow you to include those. Well, no, it doesn't. It was supposed to. And a few years ago, we did ask someone from the Technologies Department to fix it, but they never seemed to have the time. Are there any other issues with the system? Well, I've been given extra responsibilities, and so I have even less time to do the timetabling. If there was anything you could do, Randir, to make the process more efficient, that would be really helpful. Well, it sounds like you could do with an assistant, but that's obviously not possible. So, what about having an online system that students can use to do their scheduling? How would that work? Well, it may mean less choice for students, but we could create a fixed schedule of all the courses and options, and they could then view what was available and work it out for themselves. That sounds great. Okay, so we'll need to decide whether or not to improve the existing system or to build a completely new system. Well, I'd much prefer to have a new system. Quite frankly, I've had enough of the old one. Okay, that'll probably take longer, although it may save you money in the long run. When were you hoping to have this in place? Well, it's January now, and the new intake of students will be in September. We need to start processing admissions in the next few weeks, really. Well, it will take more than a few weeks, I'm afraid. As an initial estimate, I think we'll be looking at April or May to improve the existing system. But for a new system, it would take at least 9 months. That would be October at the earliest. Don't forget to comment and tell me what your answers were for questions 24 to 29. Even though you don't get enough time to sprint through all of the questions for this recording type, you would notice that there is some sort of redundancy in the conversation, which will give you time to go through the next question very quickly. You will get better at identifying it with practice. Listen to the previous conversation again, and notice how, after figuring out the correct answer, you do get just a little time to go through the next question one more time. At the end of the day, it's all about practice, and the final recording. Recording type number 4 is a monologue on an academic subject, for example, a university lecture. This recording can get a little exhausting because you have to answer all the 10 questions in one go. Before the audio begins, here are some tips to attend a question like this. These are sentence completion type questions. You have less time and more words, which means you must increase your pace of skimming through them. But the silver lining here are these subheadings. I have noticed that usually lectures are neatly divided based on these subheadings, which means if you lose track of the lecture and miss an answer or two, you can get back on track at the next subheading. You will know what I mean when you listen to the lecture. And as always, don't forget to read the word count limit before you move on to the questions. Let the audio begin. Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking about the origins of ceramics. So first of all, let's start off with what is a ceramic? Well, generally speaking, ceramics are what you get when you apply heat to certain inorganic, non-metallic solids and then allow them to cool. And examples of ceramics are everyday things like earthenware pots, crockery, glassware, and even concrete. So how did it all begin? Well, it all started around 29,000 years ago when humans discovered that if you dig up some soft clay from the ground, mold it into a shape, and then heat it up to a very high temperature, when it cools, the clay has been transformed into something hard and rigid. And so, what did those first humans do with their discovery? Well, they created figurines, which were small statues and which depicted animals or gods or any shape that the clay could be molded into. And all this activity was centered around Southern Europe, where there is also evidence of ceramics that were created much later. The early humans also found a practical use for their discovery, such as storing things like grain, although there were drawbacks. The pots were porous, so that although they could carry water in them, it wasn't possible to store it over a long period, and also, they were quite brittle and shattered very easily if they were dropped. But despite these problems, it was many thousands of years before there were any improvements. In China, at around 200 BC, they discovered that by adding minerals to the clay, they could improve both the appearance and the strength of the ceramics. But it took nearly 1,000 years before they perfected the process to produce high-quality ceramics known as porcelain, and on